Misai Good is a multifaceted professional, as you can see, with over 2 decades of experience across corporate administration, creative arts, and international project promotion. Her career spans roles as executive PA, event coordinator, and project manager, where she has supported high-profile leaders, organized international conferences, and managed artists, authors, and cultural initiatives. Alongside Misai's corporate career, she's an accomplished actor, as you can see, and she's also a model, with credits across stage, screen, and television in the UK, US, and the Caribbean. Dare I say we have a bit of a celebrity in our midst. Misai is also a published and catwalk model. And I am not finished yet. In 2022, Misai was crowned Miss Elegance UK. Wow. Whether delivering precision in administration, presence on stage, or impact in community initiatives, Misai brings professionalism, creativity, and passion into every space she steps into. So let's welcome her into our space again right now with a big round of applause as she comes up and introduces her guests.
Nearly. So who's going to come to the play? I'll be selling tickets, yeah? So contact me. Okay, let me catch my breath. Okay. Whether I'm on the stage or on the screen or in the community spaces, one truth is constant. Our stories are powerful tools. They shape identity, shift economies, and redefine what the world believes is possible. Today we are exploring cultural entrepreneurship and diaspora influence, how our creativity, our heritage, and our global connections are building new pathways across Africa, the Caribbean, and the wider world. I'm joined by brilliant minds who embody that influence, and together we're going to unpack ideas, opportunities, and solutions. Let's dive in. I would like to welcome Dr. Lavern McFarlane, Chief Economist of CARICOM Development Fund. I would also like to welcome Michael Burgess, previous senior diplomat, founder of Creative Resistance International. Oh, greetings. I would also like to welcome Fariq Brown, poet and public speaker.
That's why she was calling you.
Don't kill me. I need to give her a hug.
I would like you all to introduce yourself and tell us a bit about yourselves.
Yeah, I'll start. Okay, afternoon, everybody. So my name is Lavern McFarlane. I'm a chief economist at the CARICOM Development Fund. I'm Jamaican by birth, and I currently reside in Barbados. In terms of background, I'd say I'm a regionalist at heart. I'm always ingrained in culture and from the African diaspora right through to the Caribbean. So it's going to be interesting to hear what's happening on this panel and how we can really showcase cultural entrepreneurship. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Michael Burgess. As our moderator said, I used to be a senior diplomat. Cultural diplomacy is very close to my heart. I currently work in the creative industry. I work as a senior producer both for the British Council, the Africa Centre. I also work as the high-level events programming manager for the Royal African Society. I'm still kind of on adrenaline high because I've been rushing from London School of Economics where I'm currently producing a symposium on African cinema and liberation. I'm the festival producer and program manager for Film Africa, which is the largest film festival in all of Europe for filmmakers of African heritage. I also we just closed the UK program of the UK Kenya season, which is an extended 8 months festival season where it's about promoting creativity both in the UK and Kenya, and it's organized through the British Council. Yes, and I am very proud to say that I was born in Belize, in the most beautiful country in the world. And I say one more thing, where we say rice and beans and not rice and peas.
Rice and peas.
Give it up to Roots Juicy, the caterers, guys. Delicious food. Oh, Juicy Roots. That's it, Juicy Roots. Go ahead.
Hello again. You didn't learn the lesson. Hello. I'm Fariq, poet, public speaker, and facilitator. I've worked within youth leadership for about 7 years now, so I'm 26. But I work for Poetic Unity, which is a charity that uses poetry and spoken word to support young people with their mental health, personal development, and education. So we go into schools, prisons, corporate offices, and we basically teach young people and older people how to express themselves, how to communicate their stories. I'm a founder of my own CIC called House of Vox, which is very similar to Poetic Unity, but we use poetry and the wider arts to help tell the stories of our communities, and then also work for Young Minds as well, which is a mental health charity. So very much embedded into supporting youth and platforming youth voices. And for me, myself as a poet and spoken word artist, I speak about people, power, and politics through poetry and spoken word, and try to intersect corporate and creative industries. So I've worked with London Stock Exchange, PwC, House of Lords, and finding a space where stories can be communicated through art.
Awesome. Wow. So I'm sitting amongst royalty too. Hello. It's awesome. So I'm not going to say much because it's about you guys. Okay, first question. How can cultural storytelling influence entrepreneurship and reshape how the diaspora is perceived globally?
Is that free food,
Yeah.
yeah? Okay. I love this question because many times I've gone into either political spaces or corporate spaces and they say, yeah, we've got a poet. And the last person was like, he doesn't want any poetry, doesn't want no art. There's no room for that in a space where we have facts and figures. Rarely do people think that storytelling has a place. But I would say, and I think everyone would agree, that the world is built on storytelling. Articles, newspapers, statements, conversations, the things that Donald Trump will say and how it shifts the markets. Everything is storytelling. And I feel like when we learn to reclaim our narrative, that's when we can start to change the minds of not only the next generation, but the previous generations before that. So I always say that there's a place for storytelling, for films, for poetry, for the wider arts, because it is a paradigm shifter. And we should be encouraging more people to communicate their stories. So I would say that's where it has its place.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you.
You know, I've had the great honor of being in spaces from very high levels, the governmental levels, to also grassroots. One of the greatest joys and honors have been working grassroots. And over the last, say, 10 months, I've seen all spectrum of the creative industry being a driving force for real change. Change that even influence government policies. And that's really important. I'm talking about whether you're a poet or a musician or in fashion or just a cultural producer, you're in making artifacts, you're a historian. And so what underpins all of that is being able to tell our story, that what forms our identity. And it is the crucial right now in this day and age, and what we're dealing with when it comes to, pretty much trying to wipe out whatever is DEI. And so the storytelling and the cultural harnessing that sort of and holding on to a cultural identity is really crucial. And the only way to do that, at the end of the day, however we're represented, is storytelling. So it could be in film, it could be in poetry, it can be music, it could be in clothes, it could be a motivational speaker. It is all storytelling in different ways, including capitalizing on the fact that we have this digital capacity now that can really increase the reach. And so storytelling is a very important part of what we do, and we should never forget that everything that we do, whether you're literally speaking it, or you are writing it, or you have some sort of visual expression of it, it is all storytelling. It is absolutely crucial.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, certainly from where I sit, being an economist, we always have these complex theories, complex formula, empirical stuff. And if we can get storytelling to break down these barriers, to get these complex issues, these complex thought processes to the very grassroots, to the simplest of simple, in terms of translating what we consider policies, what we consider all these high-level matters that are critical, to translating and transcending across borders. This is how we see storytelling really, creating that connect between what we consider complex, what we consider transnational, trans-border, to get to the level that we need to. So there is definitely a place for storytelling from where we sit. Thank you.
Thank you. We don't even have to say anything to tell your story. We can be minding our own business, living our own life, and then you'll have somebody down the road saying, oh, come knocking on your door, oh, your light is blown in your car. They are watching you. It doesn't matter what you think you're doing or minding your business, people are watching you. They can knock on your door and say, oh, I saw you, like somebody in here, minding my own business, somebody saying, oh, you're an actress, aren't you? I've seen you perform. Where is she? Maybe she just, I see you perform in a show I did 2 years ago. Minding my own business. Okay, right. What are your biggest barrier in telling your story? If you have any.
In my story, other people's stories.
If you are telling your story.
Okay. Well, I tell you, I was speaking to a very dear friend of mine who's a huge cultural producer also in Paris. And for me, there isn't a barrier per se in telling my story, because my story, I know that I'm being of service. So it is about, for me, being able to, having the access is being able to ensure that other people's stories are told authentically, and they have the access by which they're able to tell their own stories. So that's really quite crucial to me. And believe it or not, access is not the big issue. One of the biggest hurdles in being able to ensure that I'm able to execute that is to ensure that we get the support of the whole community. That's really quite crucial. People showing up, even when it is not as comfortable. For example, the weather. Still show up, because this event that's happening here today is so crucial. It is so crucial. And it is also building a case, not just for understanding how culture is what underpins everything, but it's also us being here today, build the case, the business case, that makes it important that people invest in things that relating to culture. So the biggest hurdle has been to ensure that we get more people to show up. Because the access is there, ladies and gentlemen. Trust and believe. Even the funding is there. Now, we do understand with some of the funding that the application process can be quite long and tedious, but even then the funders are starting to revise that also. For example, Arts Council England.
I heard.
Do you know? So the access is absolutely there, but we all have to show up. We have, not when it's comfortable, it's when it's uncomfortable for you, you show up. If there is a hybrid experience to an event, log on. Even if you're not watching, honestly, have it in the background.
That's true.
While you're cooking curry goat or whatever it is that you're cooking. But it's important that we show up. That's the biggest hurdle.
So before you move forward, I just wanted to ask you about the Arts Council. What has changed?
I have a very dear friend of mine, going back to ACSIS. Part of ACSIS is understanding your network. It's not just spaces, it's the network, is the space. And a very dear friend of mine is head of strategic partnership at Art Council England.
Oh.
Yes, and she's amazing. And she said to me, which was quite an eye-opener, that because there are funds that are, well, first of all, around equal opportunity, DEI, right? That that what Art Council tries to do in ensuring that in this access, equal access, that funding is there for Black and brown organizations. And they do understand that the deterrent has definitely been the application process. So they have revised that quite, and they continue to. But it is when Arts Council and other funding streams have the opportunity for these, Q&As before an actual funding, a grant is actually launched, please show up and say that. Because if not, the application remains the same and becomes a big hurdle. So that's what they've done. They continue to revise that. And the funds still stay there, guys. Believe it or not. That's what she said. She says, Michael, the money is there, but they just need to tap into it. Yes. And which means, here's another thing. Many people who are good at writing application become a bid writer for other people.
Yeah. Help.
Really.
Cool. Thank you. We'll talk later.
So from where I sit, I see two fundamental barriers that currently exist, not from my storytelling per se, but just listening to potential entrepreneurs in the space who have their stories, whether it's in craft, whether it's in arts, whatever the type of entrepreneurship they're trying to get into. The first one being to maintain cultural authenticity. We recognize that for some of these things to get commercial, sometimes the uniqueness, the authenticity of culture tends to be watered down. And we find that if we're not able to maintain the true rich culture that we have, because we want to go commercial, because we want the wider masses to understand what it is we're portraying. So take, for example, I met Loretta just yesterday, and she has these specific cards with proverbs on it, telling, every little make a muckle, or, who can hear with feel. So these different proverbs, there is a story to be had because there is an underlying principle behind it. But if, for example, we take it to those who are not in the know, they might not understand the interpretation. Lucky for her, she has the actual English interpretation on the back of that. So maintaining that level of cultural authenticity is one critical barrier and an area that we need to preserve going forward. And I want to differ with my panelists here, esteemed as he may be, that there is access to funding and funding is there. I'm sure. How many of you would disagree? How many of you have actually tried to seek funding and have had some issues in terms of not knowing where to go, how to start the process, and who to do that with? So, yes, so the point I'm making is that there is a disconnect between the sources of financing and who needs the financing. And that, to me, is one of the biggest barriers that we experience in the diaspora, in country, where we are not able to bridge that gap sufficiently enough because the information is not being spread both from the demanders of capital and the suppliers of capital. And it is really platforms like this, ACSIS, that creates that, bridging that gap in terms of we know where the supply is, we know where the demand is, and how do we connect the two? And I think that is important. And so I think there is a really, David and his team are really onto something in terms of bridging those gaps for breaking the barriers for financial connection where we sit.
Thank you.
Speed fire, yeah. All right. I'll be super quick. I can see the non-verbal communications going on. All right, cool.
No, it's fine.
Just going off your point on keeping the cultural authenticity, I think more black-owned media, forms of media, where our stories can't be diluted, because a lot of, when it comes to being commercial and gaining capital, a lot of it is based on the Eurocentric standard of what art is supposed to look like and how it's supposed to sound. But a lot of the times they will culturally appropriate and take that sound and make more money from it anyway. So it's having black media forms allow us to express our stories from the ones that grab you and grab your attention to the stories that are on the ground, like people coming over to the UK and the sort of challenges that they had to go through. Has anyone watched Alterations by any chance? No? So Alterations is a Caribbean themed play that featured at the National Theatre about a man that had come over from the Caribbean and was trying to make it as a tailor. And it was going through the challenges that he faced with racism, with getting access to funding, with navigating relationships between his white counterparts and his black community. And he basically achieved his dream but lost it all at the same time. But it's those sort of stories that we need to find out, because there's many, many people from the diaspora that are miseducated about themselves and their identity.
Yeah.
And it's because the stories are missing.
Yeah.
So, and just quickly, a quick tidbit. Black history is not just for black people. Black history is for everybody. And you won't be able to create an equal or equitable society without a young white boy learning the contributions of his black brothers. And I think it's important that we push that naturally.
On the financing bit, while I did mention one of the most, perhaps most popular Arts Council England, one of, as a funding stream, we have to remember that we also need to create our own funding streams in our communities. They're incredibly wealthy people in our community, and even those who are not wealthy, there's opportunities to collaborate. That's really quite crucial, hugely important. I've had the opportunity this year to produce 2 huge Pan-African conferences, and I think, is that Esther? I see Esther Sosi, one of the most respected Pan-Africanists, is here with us, guys, and a dear friend. And one of the things that I'm always reminded when I go to these events is that the movement started from us. They didn't wait on governments to start it. And therefore, for any change to happen, even in terms of funding different projects or business ideas, it has to come from us. We really need to ensure that and hence the reason I mentioned regarding access. Yes, we can go to banks and different things, but really, if we pool all resources together, just like lots of other communities do, we can do so much more. That's what I also mean by access.
Thank you. I don't know how much time we've got left. Okay, how would you help in what you do concerning Africa and the Caribbean?
But with creativity.
What you're doing, yeah. Or what help do you need?
What help do I need? I think, cool. Helping people to teach, giving them the tools to express themselves. Whether you're a poet or you're a writer or just someone who enjoys conversation, teaching them how to communicate what's in here and what's felt in here and be able to get that out there. And that doesn't have to be for any means, but I think it's important because there's a lovely quote by Robert Frost. It says, "Poetry is what is lost in translation." So how many of us think about, we know what we're going to say, but by the time it reaches our voice box, a lot of it is lost, right? So when you teach young boys and girls how to communicate and how to express themselves and that there's nothing to fear when they do that, then you'll find that a lot of these problems with reclaiming our narrative is something that everybody will be able to communicate regardless of the room. Whether there's a poet or an artist in the room, they'll be able to communicate their lived experience. So I'd say not just my organization, House of Vox. Obviously, we are a black male-centered CIC and we go into schools, but there's many other organizations that are trying to give young people the tools that they can communicate for themselves. Because not everyone's going to have someone to talk to, but if they can pick up a pen and a page or speak to themselves, then we know that we've done one part of the role.
Thank you.
Do you know what? I am so honored that I have the opportunity to work with grassroots and high-level organizations, governmental, quasi-governmental, various different NGOs. And as a producer, I work not just in the UK, not just in Europe, not just in the Caribbean, but also across the continent of Africa. And so with organizations like, for example, the British Council, like recently, the British Council had a grant called the Festival Connect. And most of the work that the British Council does is they're always trying to connect organization or entity here in the UK, wherever the event is going to be taking place, for example, in Kenya. And recently, through the Festival Connect, I was able to facilitate and produce an event that brought Ballet Soul, which is one of the only black ballet company. There are 2 black ballet companies in the UK right now. Ballet Soul is one of them. And being able to bring them to Kenya for the Kenya International Theatre Festival was just incredible.
Thank you. I need to cut you there.
Yes.
We will talk afterwards. And
Sure.
those of you who want to talk with him can talk afterwards. Just a final word.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So from where I sit, from the financing field, we've made 2 strategic moves in terms of helping to bridge that gap. One, we became shareholders with Afrexim Bank. So us being in the Caribbean, we want to make that connect into the continent. We've also become a strategic partner with ACSIS platform because we see that there is a need to educate on financial literacy, to educate on where you can identify those sources of finance. We also recognize that there is a role for the diaspora to play, not just in terms of remittances and in terms of giving financing, because we know, yeah, the diaspora has deep pockets, but the diaspora also has significant amount of knowledge and skills that can be transferred across the board to help entrepreneurs within the respective regions to grow and to develop. And that is the role that I'm playing in that place. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, what we have heard today is clear. Culture is power. Right?
Yep.
Creativity is currency. And the diaspora and the global network of brilliance. Thank you so much for being up here with me. I couldn't do it by myself. Well, I can do a monologue by myself. But anyway, thank you so much. Time is up.